Hi everyone and welcome to Asami Rat Care. First off, apologise if this is a little bit kind of jerky and such. You're putting up with my hand as the phone stand today because my phone stand is currently in use. Let's go over there. And also apologies for the mess. The reason I've been a bit quiet recently is we've got litters going on and everything gets chaotic when I've got litters, in a good way. And if you watch whenever I finish my soil as substrate video, which is a work in progress. I've just filmed the first part of it today already, but it's a bit longer, than this one. So that one is introduced my next litter, so you can see a couple of them. I'm sure you'll get more of them as things go on. So today is all about substrate again. So this time I'm going to talk about one of the better types of substrate available in the UK. And I will say UK because sadly this does not seem to be that popular elsewhere in the world, and I don't know why it's not caught on. It's a great idea as a form of recycling. It's basically cardboard, chopped cardboard. Nice little random red piece here. Don't get red is bad. I'll explain why later. But anyway, chopped cardboard is quite a common substrate in the UK. It's a good one. It is not perfect by any means. So when I think back to the kind of three main factors that I was thinking about in terms of rating substrates, sorry, I seem to be now allergic to cardboard. In terms of absorbency, cardboard is not as good as a decent quality shaving, but I would say it's probably better than something like Carefresh or Megazorb, which I really don't rate, and definitely better than something like fleece, which is useless, or newspaper or that kind of thing. So card is fairly good, and it does really depend on how it's prepared as well. So there's two main types of card. There's chopped card squares and strips. So this is meant to all be squares, but needless to say you get some strips in it. I quite like that. The rats quite like them. They're great for nesting. And then there is also like very small kind of shredded card, let's call it. So you've got kind of squares and shreds, or kind of big thick strips really, and shreds. So that's kind of the main two types you get, and sometimes these kind of shredded bits are soft, in the case of one brand called Phenocard, and this one, which is my kind of preferred brand, Green Mile, or you can get it under some different names as well. The reason I like this one is it's quite springy, which is great. It's kind of like if rats decide to jump from a height, they can land on a nice springy, bouncy substrate, because they do like to scare us. The kind of squares, I would say, are probably more readily available. You can get them in more cases. Brands like EcoBed's quite a common one. I think what the brand is I've got. There's quite a few like local brands as well. I'm not sure mine is a well-known brand by any means. They are sold for horse beddings, much like your kind of big bags of shavings. They're generally sold for horses, so you would need to kind of go around and speak to some of your equine stores to try and locate a good source for them. They're very good value, so they're typically coming in around about 6 to 10 quid locally without delivery. If you buy them online, which you can do, they tend to cost more, around the 12 to 15 quid. Your best places to get things like that are Rat Rations. Have got kind of majority of the different brands on there, and I think Phenocard do online. You can sometimes get some of the other types online as well, but you do pay quite a bit for the delivery, and that is fair enough because they weigh a lot and they last a long time. So much like the shavings, they will last you several months for a normal sized cage, even with regular weekly clean outs, which not everybody kind of does now. So absorbency, I would say moderate. So they're good enough, but they're not amazing. In terms of irritants, so this kind of idea that we don't want them to irritate the rat's tract at all, they don't have the kind of stigma attached to them of phenols and such, which shavings do have attached to them. And in many cases, the majority of rats get on okay with them. The one thing you can get is some can get quite dusty, and that's partly because you're basically chopping up paper, and chopping up paper creates dust. Nearly all of them are dust extracted, but there are degrees of dust extraction. And I do find that you'll get 1 or 2 rats, much like with certain shaving brands. They will just not get on with that particular shaving. In fact, I would say there is not a bedding or substrate out there that one rat will not have a problem with or be allergic to. The same with people. We had a lovely pet owner once that was badly allergic to cardboard based products and anything like that, to the point where she was nearly giving up the rats, thinking it was the rats, switched off cardboard and actually found she was fine. But the majority of rats are absolutely fine on cardboard, and it makes it a very useful substrate. So from an irritant point of view, it's fairly good, and it's worth a try if your rats aren't getting on with shavings. It's well worth a try on the cardboard. And then the final thing is the kind of enrichment factor, the diggability, that kind of thing. And card is generally very good for it. They love using it as a nesting material. That's where the kind of big strips come in. You'll see your rats kind of carrying them up and down the cage and making nests out of them, which is lovely. What I find is the squares alone sit quite flat on the base. They just kind of, they haven't got a lot of kind of 3 dimensions to them. They kind of just sit and settle, and that isn't great in terms of scatter feeding. It tends to sit on the surface. The kind of shredded cardboard, that's got a lot more kind of buoyancy and is a lot better from a scatter feeding point of view and a kind of digging point of view. Neither of them well, to be fair, the squares really don't form tunnels very well. The shreds can do. It depends how the kind of rats can pack them down. So they're quite good from that point of view. You can still have a decent amount of kind of foraging and such in them if you do use the kind of squares. Just ruffle the kind of surface up and the food will fall in, and then they'll get all that kind of fun out of it. Far better than the likes of kind of fleece and so on. One thing I really like doing with card, I find it mixes really well with other substrates. Because it doesn't have the best absorption, but it's got really good kind of enrichment nesting kind of point of view, then mixing it with a good quality shaving or hemp like obiose works really well. And I find that makes card a much better option than just using it on its own. So I'd recommend that if you're tempted and you've got space to store 2 big bales, try mixing it with something that's a bit more absorbent. You'll probably find that you extend the lifespan of the cardboard. It will smell less and it'll be nice to use. But yeah, card is a very good option. Hopefully they'll catch on in America and start offering more kind of card beddings. It is quite common in the UK, sold for horses and small animals. Phenocard is a small animal specific kind of brand now. But yeah, just see how it goes. One thing I will give as a bit of a warning with card is in fact it's the same with any horse bedding really, is make sure when you get it you check how it's stored. What I've seen people do before, because it doesn't really matter for horses, they will just store it outside and it will get damp. But then for the length of time that we keep it in the bale with rats, because you will slowly work through a bale over the course of several months, you will find that it will get mouldy, it will get smelly, it will get damp. In some cases they could have had wild rats on it and so on. Comes back to the point that I made on the shavings of quarantining it for 3 weeks before you use it, just to make sure you got through any louse life cycle. But that is one to bear in mind. Card seems particularly susceptible to being damp. It's natural, it's kind of, you know what card gets like when it's soggy. But that's one to bear in mind. But otherwise, excellent choice of kind of substrate. Works particularly well when mixed with something more absorbent, and it's excellent for nesting. It's also particularly useful if you've got litters. I quite like using it for them because again they can really form nice structural nests. I do usually add some shavings to that as well, like a mixture of the two, whereas I don't use card anymore in my normal cage setups. I just stick to either shavings or soil, mostly down to the absorbency point of view. But I do keep it in for my litters because the mums love it. So that's really the summary on the card. I would definitely encourage you to try it if you've never tried it. You can I think you can get small bags of it from Rat Rations. Actually, it's a great place to try new things. By the way, I'm definitely not on commission from Rat Rations, despite what some people think. But yes, they do some really good stuff, and it's a good place to try a small amount of substrate before you're going to change it if you're in the UK. A little impractical in the rest of the world, particularly because substrate is heavy and has quite high postage costs, but that's quite a good way to try it. So my next video will probably either see me finishing the one on soil, which is, like I say, going to be a bit long, or I might try and get hold of some hemp. I like to have hold of it to show you. I haven't used hemp for a while, but I'll go through that when I get it next. then I might do some of the substrates that I would recommend people not using, and take it from there. Right, so I think that's me for today. Rather quiet because the rats are all trapped in the cage after the initial... They tried to escape when I was trying to film the soil earlier, so they're all caged. Everything was chaotic. They'd knock over cameras and all sorts. So they're still in there, but they're all doing well. So bye for now from me, and I will see you hopefully later this week if I get organised.